but all I can say is that sometimes, if you're a Christian and you believe, there is something, and this was a case in point. You just think, well, I know it's the right thing, and if it's the right thing, then not that it's easy, but you just got to have trust and faith that God's going to get you through.
Hello out there. Welcome to Faith in God Alone. And today I've got a special guest with me, and I'm going to talk with him, and he's going to share his faith. All right. Do you want to tell us briefly about who John is?
Um, right. Well, as you said, my name is John, but you can call me anything you like. I live in Hull, which is in East Yorkshire, which is the capital of bus and cycle lanes. So if you like bus and cycles, you're welcome to come here. You might get a bit fed up with them, but also the home of Hull City. I think they're a lot better team than many teams like Chelsea, for instance. Um, but you can't win them all, can you? And
No.
I'm married to Yvonne, and we've got two girls. Sabina, who lives near Grimsby. She's I think she's 38 now, and Erica, who lives in Southampton. We've got four grandchildren. Sabina's got Nathan, who's 5. Erica's got twin boys, Samuel and Noah, who are 7, and Hannah, who is 9. So I think that's just a little bit about us. And I'm not as old as I look.
Okay. By the way, I'm Samson. I didn't introduce myself at the
All right,
beginning.
pleased to meet you. First time I've seen you.
Yes. John, can you please tell us a bit about how you became a Christian?
Yeah, I can. I'm afraid it's not particularly exciting. It's not like one of these overnight sensational conversions. When I was younger, well, I was brought up in a Christian home. My mother used to go to the local Pentecostal church. And so basically, I went to church from being a baby, I would say. Um, and I think, as I say, it wasn't a dramatic conversion. I just remember that at some point when I was a boy, I'm guessing somewhere maybe age 10, 11-ish or something like that, and that's when I became a Christian. And yeah, so that would be, in terms of conversion, that would be when I first became a Christian.
Yes, and that was, I presume, a wonderful experience for you.
Yeah,
Did you?
I think in some ways it's one of them things where it would be nice to have a dramatic conversion, because in some ways that might be very exciting. And I'm not saying it wasn't, but it just seemed, in my case, I suppose it just seemed almost normal.
So I presume your faith in Jesus matters a lot to you, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I can never quite understand how people can have either no faith or faith in something that in reality is meaningless. And it just gets you through times in life when, not everything goes well. Sometimes it does, but sometimes when things get tough, when for whatever reason, whether it's health, whether it's you don't have much money, or whatever little problems you might have, at the end of the day, you know that God is always there. And even though me personally might be weak and fairly useless, you know that God is always there.
And I was very inspired by one aspect of your life when, at some point, as adults, you have to go back to university
Mm,
and retrain again to become a teacher. Because people might say, but this man is not right in his mind because they will say he's got a family. How is he going to afford the mortgage and so on? But it's your faith in Jesus that helped you out. You want to tell
mm.
us briefly about it, if you don't mind?
Yes, certainly. I mean, said that some people might say I'm a bit odd anyway, but anyway, that apart. Um, Essentially, one of the bigger parts of my and our life was, I'll try and be as concise as I can, but I've had 3 jobs. The first one was for a year, and then I worked for the local bus company in Hull, and I was there. I would have been there for 17 years had I stayed, and this was back in 1994. Just to cut the story short, if anybody knows anything about local bus companies, they used to be owned by the councils, so they were subsidised, and then they had to be sold off. There was what they called deregulation. In the first phase, the council were allowed to own the company but not subsidise it. And in the second phase, it's when they weren't allowed to own it full stop and had to sell it off, which is where my story starts in that sense. Because the whole bus company were looking to get sold off, and they were sold off to some people that I'd have to say were very not nice people. I would use the word horrible people. In the end, we felt that it was the right thing. And I remember at church going out, we went out for prayer, memorable occasion, and we both felt that it was the right thing for me to leave. Up to that point, I'd been for what you call a psychometric test, which basically tests your skills in basic literacy and numeracy. This would have been somewhere around about, I would imagine, early 1994. And those skills apparently told me that literacy I was okay. I mean, at least I can speak. And it put me on a par apparently with in numeracy terms with graduates. And so they said about, on the one hand, they said that statistics, which in my case rang a bell because at school, can I just say at school, I actually failed my maths A level. I was actually pretty useless. But I was really good at statistics, and I got an A in statistics in those days. It was O level. So on the one hand, they said about doing statistics, and on the other hand, they said, but you're too late to apply this year. Also, sometime that year, I went to have a day as a milkman to see if that suited me, see if I'd not lost my bottle. And that went well, but it was again a bit of a risk. But to cut the story short, we reached somewhere around about May, June time, and we both felt, so we'd been out for prayer, we both felt that it was what God wanted, it was the right thing to do to leave. I'd have to say, looking back, it was probably a bigger risk than I thought at the time, because at the time we had two children who at that point were young. If I left my job just because I wanted to leave, I was not entitled to any benefits at all. I think you had to be about a year before you could claim any benefits. At the time, Yvonne didn't have a job, so even though my job wasn't well paid, it was a job. And as I say, if I left it, I would have gone from something to nothing. Anyway, so to cut the story short again, in the end, I decided to leave. So I gave me notice in. Now, from memory, I think it was because I had a certain amount of holidays. So I left in August, but I left, my last day of employment was the 31st of August, but I left mid-August because I had some holidays. I think it was the last day, technically, that I left. Yvonne got a part-time job. And then when the first proper day of unemployment, it was probably actually the 1st of September, I was just looking, if people remember on the old-fashioned teletext on the television, I was just looking at the Hull University and they had vacancies in statistics. And I thought, because they told me that it was too late. Anyway, I rang them up and I didn't think they'd want me because A, I'd failed a maths A level, and B, I was at that point 35, I think it was. Anyway, I rang them up and they said to go in. And then I went in, I think it was probably the next day, and they took me. The main thing that wanted me to do is because I've been out of employment for so long, out of education for so long, and because I'd failed the maths A level, I had to. It was called I've forgotten. These days you call it an access course or something like that. So I had to go to the local sixth form centre for the first year, and then after that, if I was successful, I would then go on to do the degree part. So I went to White College, which was the local sixth form college in Hull. The course really was designed for young people who had not done so well at school or failed. It was maths, sciences, and IT at the time. Anyway, I went to Wycombe, and because I'd failed my maths A level, everything just fell into place actually. Because I wasn't very confident, but because I'd failed maths A level, there was two groups in maths, and so I was in the slow one because I hadn't passed my A level. So it meant that I was able to build up my confidence, slower than being thrust right into the group that had actually just done maths A level. I do remember, just as a bit of interest, is that one of the things they asked me is what I was not very good at. And because I couldn't remember much because it was such a long time I'd been at school. But all I can remember from the A level is that I was useless at calculus. Could I just say at this point, I was so bad at maths A level, I didn't even get an O level pass, I just got a U. And later on, my best ever grade at university turned out to be calculus in higher violence.
Praise the Lord.
So at Wyke, it was good, even though I was with, I mean, there's 2 or 3 of us older people, but the majority of people, the younger people, but the teachers were really good, and I got through that. Went to university. First year did all right, and ended up after the 4 years, I ended up with 2-1. So I was quite pleased with that. I think it was something like 68% overall. I was never really anywhere realistically near to a first, but I was a lot nearer to a first than I was to a 2-2. Not that that really matters. Whilst I was doing the degree, I was sort of thinking what you do next, and I wasn't. To be honest, I'm not even very good at this really. But I was never very good at talking in front of people. And the last thing in my life I probably ever thought I would be a teacher. Anyway, I thought, well, I did some volunteer work in my daughter's school, and I thought, well, if nothing puts me off, then I'll go for that. Because obviously, with having a wife and 2 children in Hull, it wasn't really very easy just to move. And so I did some volunteer work at Hessle High School, which is where Sabina and Erica went to. It went okay. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go for the teacher training thing. At the time, it was PGCE because there weren't any of these things that they have nowadays. And I went on the PGCE, and to cut it short, I managed to get through and became a teacher when I think I was in 1999. So I would have been about 40-ish, just 40, I think. And I was there for, well, I would have been there for 15 years. Took early retirement. As I say, I'm not as old as I look. And also I've done some, until last year, which was the first year I haven't been teaching. But I did go into the school that I used to work at full time, and I've been doing work with pupils in year 11, what they call intervention. And the other big bonus for me with being a teacher is that I did pay into a pension when I was at Transport, but at the time it would have been based on my low wages. When I became a teacher, I was able to transfer the amount of years I'd got as a on the buses into my teacher pension, which meant that when I did retire, I was able to take early retirement, even though I did lose money, but it was a whole lot more than I would have got had I been still working on the buses.
You are watching Faith in God's Alone, and today my guest is John, and I'm Samson. John, there might be so many people out there who are willing to go for a career change, Christian, for example, but they don't want to take a risk. What kind of advice can we give them?
Well, I can only speak from personal experience. I can understand people have got. I mean, God's given us a brain, so we obviously have to use common sense and not be stupid. But all I can say is that sometimes, if you're a Christian, you believe there are some, and this was a case in point. You just think, well, I know it's the right thing, and if it's the right thing, then not that it's easy, but you just got to have trust and faith that God's going to get you through. And I think, as I've said already, I think that was proven to us, particularly in 2 ways. One, Yvonne getting a part-time job on the day, my last proper day of work, and 2, on my first proper day of unemployment, there was vacancies in something that I was told there weren't any. And thirdly, I suppose, is that they still wanted me. I found out later on they like older people because they tend to be more committed than younger people, and they're not so much interested in the, shall we say, the social side of university life. And even though we might not be as bright, we tend to be more dedicated, because in my case, obviously I had more to lose. But going back to your question, Samson, I think the advice I would give to somebody else is, if you know it's right, you got to go for it, and you know that it'll work out. As I say, we were never rich. Even when I was at university, we were never rich. Still aren't, but we're not poor. So, and the other thing, advice is that in reality, uh, there's a lot more to life than money. And as I say, I could have been better off in various points, but yeah, yeah, as I said, God's more important than money, isn't he?
Yes, that's right. And I was very inspired by your story, John, as I told you before. So this was Faith in God Alone, and today my guest is John, and I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation. John, we're going to say bye now. Thank you very so
Okay,
much, John. Take care. God bless.
okay. And if anybody wants to find out any more, just ask Samson, and he can ask me, and he can pass on any comments, if that's any help.